A white coworker belittles a black employee, unaware she's the company founder. What follows changes their lives and the whole office forever. The morning sunlight streamed through the towering glass walls of Sterling Innovations, casting long, angular shadows across the sleek desks and polished floors. It was a new day in the city's fastest-growing tech company, and the office buzzed with the quiet hum of focused productivity. Keyboards clicked rhythmically, phones rang intermittently, and distant conversations threaded through the open-plan space, like murmurs of an invisible current. Angela Brooks sat near the center of it all, her workstation perfectly organized, screens glowing with complex data, her notes carefully arranged beside a steaming cup of black coffee. She exuded calm control, every movement deliberate and measured. To anyone passing by, she appeared to be just another competent, if somewhat reserved employee, the kind of person who gets the work done without making waves. But appearances were deceiving. Angela wasn't just any employee. She was the founder of Sterling Innovations, the visionary who had built the company from a modest startup into the industry powerhouse it had become. And as majority shareholder, she held the real power behind the scenes. Her preference was to work quietly, allowing her company's success to speak for itself. The public face of leadership often fell to others, executives, spokespeople, managers, while Angela focused on innovation, strategy, and the future. It was a balance she carefully maintained until today. The calm atmosphere shattered when Mark Reynolds entered the scene. Mark, a project manager known as much for his brash confidence as his tendency to belittle others, approached Angela's desk with a swagger that seemed to command attention. A white man in his late 30s, Mark carried himself like he owned the place, his voice loud enough to cut through the office's ambient noise. He leaned over Angela's desk, arms crossed, eyes scanning the report displayed on her monitor. "You really think this is ready to submit?" he asked, voice dripping with condescension. Angela did not look up immediately. Instead, she took a moment to gather her thoughts before replying evenly. "If you have specific feedback, I'm open to hearing it," Mark snorted, clearly unimpressed. "Specific feedback? This report is full of errors and oversights. I don't know how you even got assigned this project." The few colleagues within earshot paused their work, exchanging glances. They had seen Mark's sharp tongue before, especially directed toward anyone he considered lesser. Angela, however, had remained unfazed until now. She finally met Mark's gaze, steady and unyielding. "If you'd like to point out the errors, I'm listening." Mark's smirk twisted into something colder. "I'm not here to tutor you. Maybe you should stick to tasks you can handle instead of pretending to lead." The room's energy shifted. Other employees lowered their voices, some casting furtive looks in Angela's direction. The insult was clear and public. Angela's voice remained calm but firm. "Your comments are neither helpful nor professional. I expect respect in this workplace." Mark laughed dismissively. "Respect? You're just another employee here, trying to play boss." That was the moment Angela decided enough was enough. Rising from her seat, she faced the growing audience of colleagues who had stopped working to witness the confrontation. Her voice rang out, clear and authoritative. "For the record, I am not just another employee. I am the founder of Sterling Innovations and majority shareholder." The office fell into stunned silence. Mark's confident facade cracked as confusion replaced arrogance. "You... what?" he stammered. Angela's eyes never wavered. "I've chosen to work behind the scenes, focusing on what matters most, building this company with integrity and vision. I will not tolerate disrespect or assumptions based on appearances." Mark's bravado dissolved, and he took a hesitant step back. Whispers swirled through the office like a rising tide. Angela straightened her blazer, commanding attention. "This company thrives because of the hard work and respect we show each other. That starts with you." As the buzz of conversation resumed, Angela knew this was more than a simple correction. It was a turning point. Later that day, she called a company-wide meeting. It was time to set the tone and ensure everyone understood the values Sterling Innovation stood for. But before addressing the team, she allowed herself a quiet moment to reflect on the journey that had brought her here. From early struggles to building a successful company that still had miles to go. Because this wasn't just about one quarrel in an office. It was about reclaiming respect, reshaping leadership, and showing that true power isn't about loud words, but quiet confidence. And Angela Brooks was ready to lead the way. The atmosphere inside Sterling Innovations had changed dramatically since Angela Brooks had revealed her true role as founder and majority shareholder. For weeks, the air was thick with a mixture of anticipation, uncertainty, and quiet conversations behind closed doors. People who once treated Angela like just another employee now glanced at her with new eyes, some filled with admiration, others tinged with unease. Mark Reynolds felt that shift more acutely than most. Known for his loud voice and sharp tongue, Mark had long held himself as the alpha in the office hierarchy. His confidence was unmistakable, bordering on arrogance. He was the project manager who wasn't afraid to speak up, often at the expense of others. And for years, that had worked in his favor. But now, things were different. It was a brisk Tuesday morning when Mark entered the conference room for the weekly executive briefing. The room, a sleek space with glass walls and polished wood, was already filling with Sterling Innovations' leadership team. Heads turned as he stepped inside, some with curiosity, others with guarded sympathy. Angela was seated at the head of the table, radiating a quiet power that filled the room. Her presence commanded respect, not by shouting over others, but through steady, deliberate composure. The weeks since the confrontation had seen her grow into a more visible leadership role, one she embraced with grace and determination. "Good morning, everyone," Angela began, her voice calm yet firm. "Today's agenda is about more than just performance metrics. We need to talk about our company's culture, who we are, how we treat each other, and where we want to go as a team." She clicked a remote, and the screen behind her lit up with bold words: respect, inclusion, accountability. Mark shifted uneasily in his chair. The words felt like a direct challenge to his old way of thinking. Angela continued, "We are implementing a zero-tolerance policy for discrimination and disrespect. This means no room for language, actions, or assumptions that undermine our colleagues." The room fell silent. The weight of her words was palpable. Mark caught Angela's steady gaze and felt a flicker of discomfort, an unfamiliar feeling for someone so used to dominating conversations. She pressed on. "Change is often uncomfortable, but it's essential. I expect each of us, especially those in leadership roles, to embody these values." After the meeting, the office buzzed with discussion. Many employees expressed relief, hopeful that this new era would foster a more respectful and supportive environment. Yet, others felt challenged, unsure how to adapt to the shifting expectations. Mark's usual bravado was tempered by a dawning realization that his behavior was under scrutiny in ways he hadn't anticipated. The man who once led the room with his voice was now forced to listen and learn. Later that day, Angela called Mark into her office. The space was warm with afternoon sunlight filtering through the windows, softening the modern lines of the room. She gestured toward the chair opposite her desk. "Mark," she began gently, "I want to talk about what happened, the tension between us, and in the office." Mark took the seat, his posture stiff but open. "I know I was wrong," he admitted. "I spoke out of line. I want to fix this." Angela nodded, her tone sincere. "Acknowledging mistakes is important, but what truly matters is what you do next." She outlined a path forward: diversity training, mentorship programs, leadership workshops focusing on empathy and collaboration. "I believe you have the capacity to grow," Angela said, "and I want to support you through that." Mark absorbed her words, a mix of humility and hope blooming inside him. For the first time, he saw a way to rebuild, not just his reputation but his understanding of leadership and respect. In the weeks that followed, Mark embraced the opportunity. He attended training sessions, listened to colleagues' stories, and challenged long-held assumptions. The journey was difficult. Old habits died slowly, and moments of discomfort surfaced frequently. But each step brought growth. Angela, meanwhile, led by example. She made herself visible throughout the company, checking in with teams, recognizing achievements, and encouraging honest dialogue. Her leadership was a steady beacon, proving that authority came not from loud declarations, but from trust and integrity. Sterling innovations began to change. Collaboration improved, morale lifted, and innovation flourished in an environment where everyone felt valued. During a company meeting, Mark stood and publicly praised Angela's impact. "Angela's leadership has taught me more about respect and teamwork than any course or seminar," he said earnestly. "She challenged me to rethink how I lead and how I treat others." Applause filled the room. For Mark, it was redemption. For Sterling Innovations, a sign that true change was possible. Angela smiled, knowing this was only the beginning. The real work of building a respectful and inclusive culture required ongoing commitment. One conversation, one choice, and one courageous act at a time. The week following Angela's powerful confrontation with Mark was a turning point not only for him, but for the entire Sterling Innovations family. The office, once humming with routine productivity, now buzzed with conversations charged by curiosity, surprise, and a cautious hopefulness. Angela's revelation, that the unassuming woman they'd worked alongside was the company's founder and majority shareholder, had shattered long-held assumptions and ignited a wave of reflection. Angela understood that a simple reveal, no matter how dramatic, wouldn't magically transform the culture. Words were important, yes, but true change required action, transparency, and the courage to face uncomfortable truths. She was determined to lead that change, and she knew it started with the whole company. A company-wide email invitation arrived in every inbox, announcing an all-hands meeting. The message was clear but measured. "We are at a pivotal moment in our company's history. Join me as we discuss our future, together." No hint of drama, but an unmistakable call to unity and purpose. The day of the meeting, the Sterling Innovations Auditorium filled quickly. Employees poured in from every department, their faces reflecting a spectrum of emotions: eager anticipation, guarded skepticism, and thoughtful engagement. The usual chatter was replaced by a focused silence as Angela took the stage, the spotlight highlighting the quiet strength that had always defined her. "Thank you all for coming," she began, voice steady and sincere. "Today, I want to speak openly about who we are, where we've come from, and where we are headed." Her gaze swept across the crowd, connecting with familiar faces and new ones alike. "Many of you have worked with me without knowing that I founded Sterling Innovations. Years ago, I started this company with a vision, not just to build technology, but to build a community where everyone could contribute, innovate, and succeed." A ripple of surprise moved through the audience as realization dawned. The woman who had seemed so reserved was the heart behind the company's success. Angela continued, "But with growth come challenges. We've made incredible strides, but it's clear that we still face issues of respect, inclusion, and equity. Discrimination and disrespect have no place here. Not now, not ever." The screen behind her flickered to a bold new strategy titled "Together Forward," outlining tangible steps to create a more inclusive culture. The plan included clear policies enforcing zero tolerance for discrimination and harassment, Diversity hiring goals aimed at broadening representation. Formation of employee resource groups to foster community and support. Mentorship programs designed to develop and empower underrepresented talent. Transparent channels for reporting concerns, with guarantees of confidentiality and accountability. Angela's words were not just rhetoric. They were a commitment, a blueprint for action. Our success depends on us growing not just as a business, but as a community. Every voice matters. Every contribution counts. The room remained attentive as questions flowed, some cautious, some skeptical, others eager for clarity. Angela welcomed them all, encouraging honest dialogue. It was a departure from the past, a new openness that many found refreshing, if unfamiliar. Later, after the meeting, Angela sought out Mark. Their private conversation would prove pivotal. Mark entered her office with a mix of hesitation and resolve. "Angela, I've been thinking a lot," he said quietly. "I didn't understand before how much I was blind to. What you're doing here, it's powerful." Angela smiled gently. "Acknowledging that is the first step, Mark. Growth is a process, and it takes willingness." She shared with him opportunities to engage more deeply, upcoming diversity workshops, mentoring roles, and leadership development programs aimed at fostering empathy and collaboration. "I believe you can be a part of this change," Angela said. "It won't always be easy, but it will be worth it." Over the following weeks, Mark threw himself into learning. He attended workshops where colleagues shared personal experiences, stories of barriers overcome, of resilience, of hope. He listened, often uncomfortably, confronting his own biases and assumptions. It was not a smooth journey. There were moments of frustration, self-doubt, and missteps. But Mark persisted. Slowly, he began to see beyond his previous worldview, developing a deeper respect for his colleagues and their diverse experiences. Angela, meanwhile, walked the halls of Sterling Innovations with renewed purpose. She stopped to chat with teams, listened to concerns, and celebrated successes. Her leadership was visible and engaged, not commanding from afar, but present and involved. The company's culture started to shift. Collaboration improved, employee engagement scores rose, and new hires from varied backgrounds joined enthusiastically, drawn by the company's evolving reputation. The air felt lighter, more inclusive. One afternoon during a team meeting, Mark surprised everyone by standing and speaking candidly. "Angela's leadership has changed the way I see this company, and how I see myself," he said earnestly. "She challenged me to listen, to grow, and to lead with respect." Applause filled the room. For Mark, it was redemption. For Sterling Innovations, a symbol of transformation. Angela smiled quietly. She knew this was just the beginning. The work to build a truly inclusive culture was ongoing, requiring patience, courage, and commitment from every member of the team. But as she looked around the room that day, at faces filled with hope and determination, Angela felt something rare and precious: the promise of real change. As the weeks stretched into months, the impact of Angela's leadership rippled deeply through Sterling Innovations. What had started as a seismic revelation now grew into a sustained movement, one that challenged not just individuals, but the company's very culture and identity. The message was clear: respect and inclusion were non-negotiable pillars of the organization's future. Mark Reynolds found himself on a path he hadn't anticipated. His characteristic swagger had softened, replaced by a growing humility and an eagerness to learn. The diversity workshops and mentorship programs were no longer corporate obligations, but became opportunities for meaningful growth. Each session peeled back layers of his previous assumptions and biases, often uncomfortable but necessary. One chilly autumn morning, Mark arrived early, a cup of coffee in hand, ready for a mentorship meeting with Tasha Williams, a rising project leader, known for her sharp intellect and unyielding determination. Their partnership, initiated as part of Angela's inclusive initiatives, was proving to be transformative. "Thanks for meeting me this morning," Tasha said, her smile warm but professional as she shook his hand. Mark returned the gesture. "I'm looking forward to it. I think we both have a lot to learn from each other." Their conversation spanned well over an hour, touching on technical challenges, the company's future, and, most importantly, the intricacies of workplace culture. Tasha spoke candidly about moments where she felt overlooked or underestimated, about microaggressions that often went unnoticed by those not experiencing them. "It's not just policies on paper," she explained. "It's about creating a space where people feel safe to bring their whole selves to work without fear." Mark nodded thoughtfully. "I'm beginning to see that. It's about empathy, something I haven't always prioritized." At the same time, Angela was leading Sterling Innovations toward a future grounded in authenticity and accountability. She launched an initiative called Voices Together, a series of open forums designed to foster dialogue across departments and hierarchies. These gatherings encouraged employees to share their experiences, both good and difficult, in a safe, judgment-free environment. The first forum drew an unexpectedly large crowd. Employees from every level of the company packed into the auditorium, their faces a blend of curiosity, anxiety, and cautious hope. Angela opened the session with heartfelt words. "This is more than a business meeting," she said. "It's a conversation about who we are and who we want to become." Stories poured out, of subtle exclusions, assumptions made on appearance, and moments when voices were silenced. The honesty was raw and sometimes painful, but it sparked a collective commitment to change. Mark listened with a newfound openness. The narratives challenged him to confront the limitations of his own perspective and to reconsider what leadership truly meant. He realized that managing tasks was no longer sufficient. Leading with empathy and accountability was the future. However, not everyone welcomed these changes. Resistance simmered beneath the surface. Some veteran employees voiced concerns in private meetings, worried that the new policies might dilute focus or impose unrealistic expectations. The tension was palpable. Angela addressed this resistance head-on during a leadership retreat. She spoke candidly to senior managers, emphasizing that culture was the bedrock of sustainable success. "Our products, our services, they depend on people who feel respected and valued," she said. "Without a foundation of inclusion, we risk losing what makes us innovative." To further support this cultural shift, Angela created a culture committee composed of diverse employees, charged with monitoring progress, identifying challenges, and advising on improvements. This group became a powerful force for accountability and transparency. Mark's role evolved as well. He took seriously his new responsibilities, becoming a vocal advocate for inclusivity. He held regular one-on-one sessions with team members, ensuring their voices were heard and their concerns addressed. His growth was evident, not only to colleagues, but to himself. Outside the office walls, Angela extended the company's influence through community outreach. She spearheaded a partnership with local schools to enhance STEM education access for underrepresented youth, aligning corporate values with broader social impact. At the company's annual retreat, held at a scenic lakeside venue, Angela addressed the entire staff under a sprawling canopy of autumn leaves. The setting sun cast a golden glow over the crowd, reflecting the hopeful mood. "We have made meaningful progress," she said, "but this is only the beginning. Our journey toward a truly inclusive culture requires ongoing effort, courage, and compassion." The applause that followed was thunderous and genuine. Later, backstage, Mark approached Angela, gratitude evident in his eyes. "Thank you for believing in me, even when I doubted myself," he said softly. Angela smiled, placing a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "We all grow by listening and learning. That's how we lead." Together, they symbolized the company's transformation, proof that change was possible when courage met commitment. Sterling Innovations was no longer just a tech company. It was a community evolving through conversations, challenges, and shared purpose, one courageous step at a time. The weeks after the launch of Sterling Innovations' groundbreaking Voices Together initiative marked a crucial juncture. The company was no longer merely talking about change. It was living it. The halls, once tinged with hesitation and old habits, now pulsed with cautious optimism and renewed purpose. Yet Angela knew better than anyone that change was never simple or linear. It required constant vigilance, relentless commitment, and a willingness to confront uncomfortable truths head-on. One brisk autumn morning, Angela was reviewing her emails when a particular message caught her attention. The note was sent anonymously, but was detailed and specific. It described an incident during a recent team meeting where James Carter, a junior employee, had been subtly undermined. A senior manager, known for his abrasive demeanor, had dismissed James's ideas in a tone that belittled not just his contribution but, implicitly, his very presence in the company. The words, though not overtly hostile, carried the heavy weight of bias, microaggressions that erode trust and morale. Angela's pulse quickened. Despite all the policies and trainings, this was a stark reminder that culture change was ongoing, fragile, and demanding. She immediately scheduled a meeting with the Human Resources Director and the senior leadership team to address the issue decisively. "This isn't merely about one incident," Angela began, her tone both grave and resolute. "It's a test of our commitment to the culture we claim to value. If even small acts of disrespect are allowed to persist, we risk undermining the very foundation of trust we've built." The leadership team agreed unanimously on swift and transparent action. The senior manager in question was promptly invited to a meeting with HR and Angela. The conversation was tense, with moments of defensiveness giving way to reflection. Angela spoke candidly about the impact of words and the responsibilities of leadership. "It's not just intent, it's impact," she emphasized. "Every one of us must be accountable for fostering an environment where every voice is valued and heard." The senior manager acknowledged his misstep and committed to undergoing sensitivity training and ongoing mentorship. Angela made it clear that repeated offenses would carry serious consequences, underscoring the company's zero-tolerance stance. News of the firm handling of this case spread swiftly. Employees watched closely, reassured that the policies weren't just symbolic gestures, but active, enforced commitments. Trust in leadership deepened, and a palpable shift toward accountability took root. Meanwhile, Mark Reynolds was undergoing his own profound transformation. The mentorship pairing with Tasha Williams had become more than a corporate requirement. It was a window into new perspectives and profound empathy. The stories Tasha shared, the struggles, the resilience, the hopes, resonated deeply with him. One crisp morning, Mark arrived early, nervously preparing for a feedback session with Tasha. As she entered, he greeted her warmly. "Thanks for taking the time," she said, smiling. Mark nodded. "I've been thinking a lot about what you shared last time, about how important it is to feel safe and valued here." Their conversation flowed naturally, delving into challenges, aspirations, and ways to nurture a truly inclusive team. For Mark, it was a humbling experience that reshaped his understanding of leadership. Simultaneously, Angela continued to lead with intentional visibility. She made it a point to walk the floors regularly, engage in candid conversations, and celebrate the diverse talents within the company. Her presence was a quiet, yet powerful reminder of the values Sterling Innovation stood for. The company culture visibly improved. Employee satisfaction surveys reflected growing positivity and trust. Recruitment efforts attracted more diverse candidates, drawn by the company's evolving reputation. Collaborative projects thrived in this more inclusive environment. Angela also launched quarterly culture check-ins, open forums where employees shared feedback directly with leadership. These meetings, sometimes emotionally charged, were vital for continuous growth and transparency. At the company's annual gala celebrating a major product launch, Angela watched with pride as diverse teams celebrated together. The energy was vibrant, filled with hope, unity, and shared accomplishment. Mark approached Angela, gratitude shining in his eyes. "Thank you for believing in me, even when I struggled to see the way," he said softly. Angela smiled warmly. "This company belongs to all of us. Our strength comes from lifting each other up." That evening, standing on the rooftop terrace overlooking the city skyline, Angela reflected on the journey. The path had been fraught with obstacles, moments of doubt, and victories both small and great. Yet the horizon was bright with promise. Sterling Innovations had evolved beyond a company. It had become a community, a beacon of integrity, respect, and courage. And Angela Brooks was proud to lead the way forward, knowing that the real work, the work of change and leadership, was ongoing, one brave step at a time. The city skyline stretched before Angela Brooks like a tapestry of lights, each one representing a story, a life, a hope. From her office window on the top floor of Sterling Innovations, she gazed out with a mixture of pride and quiet determination. The journey had been long, filled with battles both spoken and unspoken. But every challenge had shaped the company, its people, and herself into something stronger, more resilient. Tonight was the company's 10th anniversary gala. The grand ballroom glittered with elegance, crystal chandeliers casting soft light over a crowd that was as diverse as it was vibrant. Employees mingled with industry leaders, community partners, and friends who had supported the company's evolution. Laughter and conversations blended with the soft notes of a live jazz band, creating an atmosphere of celebration and hope. Angela stood near the stage, her posture regal, yet approachable. The woman who had once quietly built a tech empire from a small startup was now a beacon of leadership and change. She had transformed Sterling Innovations into more than a company. It was a community united by shared values and a commitment to respect and inclusion. As the keynote moment approached, Angela stepped forward to the microphone, her voice carrying clearly across the room. "Thank you all for being here," she began, her tone warm and steady. "Tonight, we celebrate not just a decade of innovation and success, but a decade of growth, learning, and transformation." She paused, allowing the words to resonate. "When I founded this company, I dreamed of creating a place where every voice mattered, where respect was the foundation of every interaction, and where opportunities were open to all. That dream has not been without struggle. We've faced moments of discomfort and challenge, but through courage and commitment, we have grown stronger together." The audience listened intently, many moved by the sincerity and humility in her words. Angela shared stories of the early days, the long nights, the obstacles overcome, and the pivotal moments that shaped the company's culture. She spoke candidly about the confrontation that had sparked a new chapter, the policies implemented, and the people who had embraced change and inspired progress. "We are far from perfect," she acknowledged, "but we are committed to each other, to our community, and to building a future where everyone can thrive." As she concluded, the room erupted in applause, a standing ovation that carried the weight of genuine appreciation and hope. Backstage, Mark Reynolds approached her, his face reflecting the transformation he had undergone. "Thank you for believing in me when I doubted myself," he said quietly. Angela smiled, placing a hand on his arm. "We all have the capacity to grow. The real victory is in choosing to do so." The evening continued with celebration and connection. Employees shared stories of mentorship, collaboration, and personal growth. Community leaders spoke of partnerships that were changing lives beyond the office walls. Later, as the gala wound down, Angela found a quiet moment on the terrace overlooking the city. The cool night air was refreshing, the stars bright above. She reflected on the journey, from a woman who once preferred the shadows to a leader who now stood proudly in the light. Her phone buzzed softly. A message appeared from a young woman she had mentored. "Because of you, I believe I can lead too." Angela's heart swelled with quiet joy. This was the legacy she aspired to, a ripple effect of empowerment and courage, passed from one generation to the next. She looked out at the skyline again, knowing the road ahead would hold new challenges and opportunities. But with every step, she would walk with integrity, compassion, and unwavering resolve. Because the seat she claimed that day in the office, standing firm in the face of disrespect, was more than just a moment of defiance. It was a declaration of belonging, power, and the right to shape one's destiny. And Angela Brooks was here to stay.